Okay, so you want to own a butcher shop. And honestly, the timing looks perfect. Americans are eating more meat than at any point in modern history. 258 pounds per person per year and climbing. Protein is a religion now. Meat sales just set an all-time record, $112 billion in a single year. And the price of beef? The highest it has ever been, ever. You'd be selling the one product everyone wants at the most expensive prices in history from behind a counter your customers actually trust. The best time in 100 years to sell meat, right? It is not. Here's the number nobody tells you. When you buy a steer, a 1,200-pound animal, barely a third of it will ever reach your display case. And the tenderloin, the cut your customers line up for, the filet mignon, 9 pounds per animal, 9. Everything else, the fat, the bone, the water that literally evaporates out of the carcass while it hangs in your cooler, you paid full price for it at the most expensive beef prices ever recorded. So the math works like this. An average butcher shop sells around $800,000 of meat a year. 50 to 70 cents of every dollar goes right back out the door to pay for the animals. After labor, rent, and the electricity that never stops running, a typical shop keeps 8 to 12 cents on the dollar. And the owner of a small shop takes home around $54,000 a year, almost exactly what he'd earn cutting meat for somebody else. Except now, the risk is all his, and that's before anything breaks. By the end of this video, you will understand why the supermarket down the street can sell beef for less than you paid for it, legally and on purpose. Why the most profitable thing in your case is not the steak. And why the smartest people in the meat business quietly stopped selling it by the pound decades ago. You'll also learn about a sound every butcher dreads, and you can only hear it at 2 in the morning in an empty shop, because by the time you hear it, $10,000 of your money is already dead. We'll get there. First, the buy-in. Opening a real butcher shop, not a farmer's market table. An actual shop with a case and a cutting room runs $100,000 to $300,000. Here's where it goes. The walk-in cooler, $9,000 to $16,000 installed. If you want a walk-in freezer too, and you do, add up to $18,000 more. This box is now the beating heart of your business. Remember that. It matters later. The display case, the refrigerated glass stage where your meat performs, costs about $1,000 per foot. A modest 12-foot case, $11,000. The bandsaw that cuts through bone. A new professional one runs $18,000 to $21,000. The grinder, up to $15,000. A slicer, $7,000 to $12,000. A vacuum sealer, another $1,000. Even your scales are regulated. They have to be certified legal for trade, and a government inspector will test them and physically seal them every single year. Sell 1 pound that weighs 15 ounces and the fines start. Then the paperwork, business license, health permit, food handler certifications, and a county health inspector who will walk your shop as often as 4 times a year. And the rules quietly punish success. Sell too much to restaurants instead of home cooks, and the government stops treating you like a shop and starts treating you like a factory. Federal inspectors and a second full-time job in paperwork. Want to cure a single salami? That's legally a specialized process. You'll need a written safety plan and a formal variance just to hang it. And finally, the inventory. $12,000 to $35,000 of meat just to fill the case on day one. Unlike the saw, this investment starts dying immediately. Call it $200,000 all in, and you haven't sold a single steak yet. You already know the punchline. a third. Now here's what the punchline hides, where the other 2/3 of your money goes, and why the third that's left decides whether you survive. The 1,200-pound steer becomes a 750-pound carcass before it ever reaches your cooler, hide, head, organs gone. Then physics starts billing you. A carcass is 3/4 water, and in the first 24 hours, it evaporates away 2 to 5% of the weight you paid for, just into the air. Then you cut, and about 150 pounds of fat and 110 pounds of bone hit the barrel. What's left on the block, 430 to 490 pounds, you can actually sell. And now look at what those 500 pounds actually are. The premium cuts, the ribeyes, the strips, the whole reason people romanticize this business, 80 pounds, 16%. The tenderloin, 9. The single biggest product of a 1,200-pound steer at 38% is ground beef, hamburger, nearly 200 pounds of it per animal. So here is what a butcher shop actually is. It is not a steak store. It is a machine for solving one puzzle, animal after animal. How do you sell every pound of a creature when customers only ask for 9 of them? The answer is the least glamorous case in the shop. Fresh cuts carry 25 to 35% gross margin, but sausage made from trim, marinated kebabs, cured bacon, house-made meatballs, value-added products run 40 to 50%. The trim that would die as $3 hamburger becomes $8 Italian sausage. There's one more trick in the toolbox, and it's a strange one: making the meat older. Dry aging, hanging beef for weeks in a dedicated cooler until enzymes tenderize it and the flavor concentrates. Here's the paradox. Aging means even more evaporation, even more trimmed crust, even less sellable weight from the same expensive carcass. You are deliberately shrinking your own inventory and charging so much more for what survives that it's worth it. It only works because nobody's supermarket does it. Scarcity is the product. The ribeye brings them in. The sausage pays the rent, as long as you can still afford the animal. And that's the part that just broke. And then, starting around 2021, the whole equation tightened like a vice. The American cattle herd has been shrinking for 7 straight years. As of January 1st, 2026, 86.2 million head. That is the smallest cattle herd in the United States since 1951. Drought dried out the pastures, feed costs exploded, and ranchers sent their breeding stock to slaughter instead of keeping it. Fewer cattle means more expensive cattle. Cycle meat cliff. In September of 2025, the wholesale price of beef crossed $413 per 100 pounds, an all-time record, up a third in a single year. Retail followed. By this spring, ground beef reached $6.90 a pound, the highest price ever recorded, up 72% since 2020. Great news if you own cattle. You don't. You buy them. Every one of those records is a number you pay, not a number you get to charge. Beef is the biggest line item you have. Remember, 50 to 70% of your revenue goes to buying product. When your main ingredient sets an all-time record, that record comes straight out of your margin because you can't just pass it on. A Philadelphia butcher, Rob Pazio, put it plainly: there's only so much you can absorb before you have to raise prices. And when you do raise prices, your customer does something quiet and brutal. She walks past the case, looks at ground beef at $6.69, and buys chicken breast at $4.15. Beef climbed more than 10% this year. Chicken climbed less than 0.5%. Beef is becoming a special occasion product, and you are a special occasion store paying everyday rent. The Department of Agriculture doesn't expect real relief before 2028. This isn't a bad month. This is the operating environment. In a few minutes, I'll show you how a $50 million butcher chain managed to die in 5 months in the middle of the biggest meat boom in decades. But to understand why a butcher shop is this fragile, you need to meet the thing that killed the American butcher the first time: It wasn't a supermarket, it was a cardboard box. 1967, Dakota City, Nebraska. A company called Iowa Beef Packers flips a switch on a new idea. Instead of shipping whole carcasses to thousands of skilled butchers across the country, break the animal down at the plant, strip the fat, pull the bone, vacuum seal the pieces, and ship them out in boxes. Boxed beef. That box is the reason the supermarket across the street can undercut you this morning. It was invented quite specifically to make your skill optional. Suddenly, a grocery store didn't need a master butcher who could take apart a side of beef. It needed a guy who could open a box. The company's own logic, preserved in industry histories, was explicit. Replace skilled, expensive butchers with lower-wage labor, trimming pre-processed cuts. The butchers saw exactly what was coming. 1,200 of them walked out of that Dakota City plant in protest in the summer of 1969. They lost. By the mid-70s, the box owned American beef. The numbers tell the rest. In Iowa alone, there were about 450 small meat processors in the 1960s. Today, fewer than 140. Federally inspected slaughterhouses went from 1,200 in 1990 to about 800 by 2010. The corner butcher didn't die in a crash. He evaporated, one retirement at a time over a generation. And the supermarket that replaced him plays a game you are not allowed to play. To a grocery chain, meat is bait. They will happily sell beef at cost or below it because you'll grab chips and detergent on the way to the register. Costco has sold its rotisserie chicken at $4.99 since 2009 and loses an estimated $30 to $40 million a year on it on purpose. That's not a mistake. It's marketing priced in. A supermarket chain nets about 1.7% across the whole store. It can drown its meat counter in red ink and never feel it. You have one counter. Your loss leader would just be a loss. Oh, and the internet came for you too. ButcherBox, a subscription that mails grass-fed beef straight to the customer's door, built itself into roughly $500 million a year. Its target customer is precisely yours, the person willing to pay extra to feel good about their meat, squeezed from below by the box, from above by the boom, and from the side by the mailman. Which brings us back to that sound. It's the sound of a compressor, the motor that keeps your walk-in cooler at 38 degrees beginning to die, a rattle, a stutter, then silence, and the silence is the expensive part. Remember, your inventory is not hardware. It is flesh, and flesh has a countdown. The food code is unambiguous. Once meat rises above 41 degrees, you have 4 hours. After that, legally, it isn't inventory anymore. It's garbage. A walk-in fails on a Saturday night. Nobody's in the shop until 7. That's not 4 hours. A single refrigeration failure costs a typical shop $4,000 to $15,000 in spoiled product. The entire case, the entire cooler, everything you were going to sell this week in the dumpster before sunrise, plus the emergency repair call at double the daytime rate, plus a new compressor, $2,000 to $4,500, plus the days of sales you lose while the box gets fixed. This is why refrigeration eats around 2/3 of your electric bill, $500 to $1,500 a month every month forever. Your walk-in freezer alone can burn $200 to $400 a month just standing there full, doing its job. The lights go off at night. The cold never does. You are paying to freeze the same pound of meat every single hour from the day it arrives until the moment someone buys it. And even when every machine works perfectly, the case is still leaking money. Trim that goes gray, cuts that don't sell by Friday. The industry calls it shrink. 3 to 5% of everything a meat counter handles simply vanishes, spoiled, trimmed, discounted, gone. It's one of the quiet reasons supermarkets gave up real butchery for plastic wrapped boxes. At their margins, shrink is fatal. At yours, it's Tuesday. The display case sells the meat. The compressor decides whether you keep the money. But even a flawless cooler can't protect the one thing this business actually runs on. It isn't the meat, and it spoils even faster. So why does anyone pay butcher shop prices when the supermarket is cheaper? One reason: they believe you. They believe the story on the little chalkboard: grass-fed, local farm, dry-aged, in-house. Belief is the entire premium, which is why the fastest business collapse in modern meat happened to the shop with the best story ever told. Belcampo was the dream with $50 million behind it. Founded in 2012, its own ranch, its own processing, its own gleaming shops in California. Certified organic, certified humane filet at $47.99 a pound, and customers paid it because the story justified every cent. In May of 2021, a former employee posted a video from inside a Belcampo shop. For over a year, the company had been buying ordinary commodity meat, some of it around $10 a pound, and selling it under its own regenerative organic labels at 4 and 5 times the price. Tasmanian beef, somebody else's chicken, relabeled. There was no fine that mattered. There was no lawsuit that mattered. The customers just stopped believing. And by October, 5 months later, Belcampo shut down the entire company. $50 million of brand dead in a season, not from beef prices, from a lie about beef. The pattern repeats at every scale. The celebrity butcher shop on Manhattan's Upper West Side folded owing $60,000 in rent. The pioneers who ignited the whole craft renaissance in 2004 lost their flagship by 2022. Same product, same ending. Meanwhile, the biggest name in New York meat, Pat LaFrida, makes $270 million a year. But look closer, that's a wholesale operation, selling to restaurants by the truckload. At the retail counter, nobody gets rich. The money in meat lives everywhere except the shop with your name over the door. Trust is your whole inventory. It spoils faster than the meat. So let's talk about the person behind the counter. You. Your day starts before 6 because the delivery truck doesn't wait and the case has to be rebuilt from scratch. Every tray washed, every cut faced, every price tag right before the first customer at 9. Then you cut for hours, standing on concrete in a room kept just above freezing, doing controlled violence with sharp steel. Then you sell, because in a shop this size, the guy who breaks down the carcass and the guy who charms the customer are the same guy, 6 days a week. Sunday is for paperwork, and your body keeps the books too. The government's own statisticians put butchery among the highest injury rates of any occupation in America. Not the most dramatic injuries, just the relentless ones: cuts, strains, and wrists worn down by 10,000 identical motions a week. Mastering it takes a real apprenticeship, about 3,000 hours. 2 years of your life to learn a craft whose median wage is $38,960 a year. That's the trade you're buying into for $200,000 to earn if you run a small shop well 50-something. Roughly half of retail food businesses don't see their 5th birthday, and the people who did survive are aging out. Around 2/3 of small meat shop owners are near retirement age, and their kids want no part of it. One Midwestern owner said it flat: it's killing cows, it's blood and guts. His son became an engineer. That's the case against. Here's the strange case for. About 8,600 butcher shops are still standing in America. Every force in this video has tried to kill them. The box, the supermarket, the subscription startup, 3 separate beef crises, and 8,600 are still here. Marlowe and Daughters has been breaking down whole animals in Brooklyn since 2008. And in the spring of 2020, the whole country got a demonstration of why. The industrial meat chain, those 4 giant packers moving beef in boxes, choked in a matter of weeks. Supermarket cases went empty, and the little shop that everyone had been driving past for years suddenly had a line out the door. Orders at local butchers more than doubled in a single month, then jumped by half again the month after that. The one store in the neighborhood that still knew how to turn an animal into dinner without waiting for a box was the one store that never ran out. When the system failed, everybody suddenly remembered where the meat guy was. That's the real product, and it was never steak. It's redundancy, a human being who knows where the animal came from, standing between you and an empty shelf. So, a craft that survived every machine built to replace it, or a business that buys animals at record prices to sell a third of them at single-digit margins. The last skilled trade on Main Street, or $54,000 a year on your feet in the cold, waiting for a compressor to decide your month, a calling, or a countdown. You decide.